has used the phrase pregnant persons twice, and I think in response the department used the phrase birthing clinics. Is it the position of the department that men can get pregnant and give birth?
Senator,
I'm sorry to do this to you.
yeah, I mean, really.
But we need an answer. You are the Department of Health, but people put a lot of emphasis in this.
And you need to get pregnant and give birth, you need to have a functioning uterus. So whatever you call someone, and it's generally very unlikely that someone who is a man would have a uterus and give birth. So I think that's all we can really say.
So only biological women can get pregnant?
Well, you have to have functioning female reproductive organs to get pregnant and give birth. Yeah.
Which would limit it only to women, presumably. No. Okay. Have you ever been pregnant?
Okay.
Okay. So no, in any event, I'm sorry, I haven't quite finished. I haven't got. I've just got another question, Chair. I was actually going to ask the same question to the TGA, but I expect because in fact when the TGA responded to us,
So before I start this video, I just want to point out that this video is about propaganda, okay? Propaganda. I have nothing against anyone that wants to live a lifestyle the way that they want to live, and we should support people that want to live however they want to live. In that being said, what I'm about to say might trigger a lot of you because oh, the truth hurts, you know, and at the same time, it's my opinion, okay? Anyway, I'm gonna get into this video, right? So, what is the gay agenda? What is
it? How do you define the gay agenda?
Oh, the gay agenda. There's been this plan. Like, we usually go to meetings on Wednesday in black cloak.
Okay.
Draw like a big star and a circle on the ground. We have like these cups of drink it pretty much, and we kind of like plan like world domination, like to make everyone gay and like decrease the world population.
What the is going on? We've got kids at pride parades performing drag and transitioning. We've got trans adults dominating sports, drag queens and Blue's Clues, and an endless amount of pronouns. Something needs to be said.
Remember when pride was a sin? Although that is merely a factual statement, because under the old rules applicable even a decade ago, pride was a sin and had been recognized as perhaps the cardinal sin for thousands of years previously. Still might be regarded as unacceptable to the woke authoritarian moralists who now insist, for example, that we celebrate Pride Month, not hour or day or week, but month, and who have literally called it Pride Month instead of LGBT plus month or whatever else alphabet acronym which is currently insisted upon as the only acceptable enlightened terminology. I don't regard pride as a virtue. It has been classically regarded as a sin. I don't see that sexual orientation or sexual desire of any sort is something to celebrate or to take pride in.
Isn't that weird, right? Because the gay movement is called pride. Why is that?
When prideful, we take satisfaction in a supposed elevated and preferable position compared to others. We feel better than others, as individuals or as groups, because of specific characteristics and accomplishments. We might feel this way because of the ethnic group we belong to, the country we're born in, or even the gender we identify with. On the surface, pride doesn't seem so bad, but many Christians believe pride is very dangerous and a pathway to evil. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall, says the Bible. Let's first briefly explore some Christian views and examples of pride. As we've seen in the story of Lucifer, pride leads to one's downfall, according to Christianity. The central idea behind the danger of pride seems to be that we are not greater than God, and as soon as we try to be above Him, we get in trouble. An example of this we also see in the story of Adam and Eve, in which the same fallen angel, Lucifer, now the fully fledged Satan, disguised as a snake, convinced Eve that she could be like God if she ate the forbidden fruit. One interpretation of this story is that Satan tempted Eve by evoking her sense of pride through the disobedience of God. She assumed that she knew better than him and was supposed to be like him instead of serving him. From a Christian point of view, when we're prideful, we believe we're self-sufficient, as in we don't need God and can live without him. We think our accomplishments are our own doing. Well, they're actually the work of God. Like the proud Pharaoh of Egypt, who refused to set the Israelites free as ordered by God, saying, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go." End quote. Eventually, by sending 10 disastrous plagues to Egypt, God eradicated the Pharaoh's pride, so he realized he wasn't as powerful as he thought. Again, Pharaoh thought he was better than he truly was, above God in a way, and he and the people of Egypt paid a heavy price for it. The Lord detests all the proud of heart. Be sure of this, they will not go unpunished. End quote. Christian scholars have a consensus that pride is the worst of all sins, because, aside from biblical examples, it generates every other sin as a gateway drug that leads to other drugs. The reason why pride leads to other sins is because of the thought of being better than others. For example, pride leads to greed because one feels entitled to have more, often at the expense of others. The lustful individual sees others merely as objects to be used because he believes he deserves it. Envious people feel like they should have what they want and can't stand others having what they think they should have but cannot. The glutton feels she deserves more food than necessary, even when others are hungry, and deprives them of it by taking it herself. In his arrogance, the wrathful person believes that he is always right and justly avenges what he sees as wrong by others. And lastly, the individual whose sin is sloth thinks she's too good to work and that others can do the work for her. Hence, in Christianity, pride is a sin and the worst of all sins. But what can we say about pride from a non-Christian viewpoint? If we don't take God into account, what then is wrong with pride?
Pride is not the same thing as gay pride. When we say that we are proud to be gay, it doesn't mean we're actually proud of being attracted to the same sex. What it means is we know that we are shamed for our sexual orientation. And we know that our sexual orientation, it's not morally incorrect.
Now, a lot of people, like, even from religious side of things, you know, there's a lot of text about the gay movement, you know. This is what Christians think.
Ser homosexual no es un delito, es una condición humana. Somos todos hijos de Dios. Y Dios nos quiere como estamos y con la fuerza que luchamos cada uno por nuestra dignidad. El ser homosexual no es un delito. No es un delito. Sí, pero es pecado. Bueno, primero, distingamos pecado por delito. Pero también es pecado la falta de caridad con el prójimo. ¿Y vos cómo andás?
И народ наш, как известно, выстоял и прошел через все испытания. Но сегодня с новой и новой силой, уже в масштабах целой планеты, развивается эта идея жизни без Бога, и мы видим, как предпринимаются усилия, в том числе на законодательном уровне во многих процветающих странах, законом утвердить право любого выбора человека, в том числе и самого греховного, идущего вразрез со Словом Божиим, с понятием святости, с понятием Бога. И как результат, опасное явление в жизни современного человечества. Это явление получило название дехристианизация. И, наверное, эти бы философские взгляды нельзя было бы назвать ересью, если бы очень многие христиане не приняли эти взгляды и не отдали приоритет человеческим правам более, чем Слову Божьему. И поэтому мы сегодня говорим об глобальной ереси человекопоклонничества. нового идолопоклонства, исторгающего Бога из человеческой жизни. И ничего подобного в глобальном масштабе никогда не было. И именно на преодоление этой ереси современности, последствия которой могут иметь прямые апокалиптические события, сегодня Церковь и должна направлять силу своей защиты, силу своего слова, силу своей мысли. А все это мы формулируем очень просто. Мы должны защищать православие.
This is what the Muslims think.
Male and female, we created all of you. So we're created from two genders. And Allah also says, وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. From these two, we spread forth multitudes of men and women. And the Quran explicitly says, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنثَى. The male is not like the female. And our Prophet ﷺ said, women are the complementary halves of men. They're not the same. النِّسَاءُ شَقَائِقُ الرِّجَالِ. Women are the complementary halves. Half of mankind is women, half of mankind is man. The two put together form mankind. He didn't say they are the same. So, we firmly believe that there is such a thing called sex and gender. And there is male and female. And that this difference is not just something that is imaginary or cultural.
They want us to be just like them. And they know that if they target the new generation, they can do that. Maybe not with us, but if they can brainwash our kids, that is their objective established. They do not want to stop at, accept me the way I am. Because I've had discussions with gay Muslims in the park. I've spoken to them. I don't have any hostility towards them or ill feeling towards them. And I've spoken to many people who are from the LGBTQ community. But the point is the following. It's not you identifying however you want to be identified, yeah? Which we can agree to disagree. You want me to now accept your facts, yeah? Which are not facts, okay? You want us to be like you. You want our kids to be like you. That is the problem. And you are using this under the disguise of we are a marginalized community, you know, and we are being picked on and we are being discriminated, rah-de-rah-de-rah, whatever. Those days are over.
I'm not gay, but other people are gay, really gay in fact, and people also existed in the past. So a percentage of those in the past were gay. Whatever happened to them? Now, I was expecting this video to be a 10-minute bloodbath of how every single civilization was extremely homophobic, but it turns out really depends on where you specifically go. Like take for example China, which has many records of homosexuality in the annals of their history. Get it guys? Annals, cause they're gay? Yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, there's a specific story which dates all the way back to the Han Dynasty of China, when the Chinese Emperor Ai and his lover Dong Xian were in love so much that one time they slept in the same bed. And when Emperor Ai woke up to see that Dong Xian was on his sleeve, instead of waking up Dong Xian and getting him to move, he cut his own sleeve off. This is a really cute story and all, but Emperor Ai also had a wife who probably did not find the whole thing really cute. I'm just kidding. A Chinese emperor usually had multiple concubines, and it's assumed that in the roster of the baddest Chinese concubines for the emperor, there was also a couple dudes in there as well. As time passed though, attitudes started to shift. A mixture of Central Asian and Western influences, plus the fact that dudes fucking dudes does not result in any offspring that could be heirs to the throne, started to cause male concubines to become less and less popular. And the last dynasty to have records of male concubines was the Song dynasty. By the time the Qing dynasty took control, acts of homosexuality were a punishable crime, with any gay actions causing 1 month of prison time and 100 heavy blows, which does sound rough, but was apparently the lightest punishment in Qing legal code. And honestly, from my perspective, if the government outlawed straight people having sex, and then you told me Ice Spice was down to smash, but I would get a month of prison and have gotten my shit kicked in, I'm not gonna lie, I'd be behind bars within the hour. Or 3 minutes. Anyway, the punishment seemed like a cakewalk compared to the Aztec punishment. Sad Catman. What was the Aztec punishment? Good question. The Aztec punishment was honestly pretty grim. Any two Aztec men who got caught shucking each other's corn would immediately be sentenced to death. And the person on the receiving end of the arrangement got the most severe punishment Aztec society had to offer. And keep in mind, this is the most severe punishment coming out of the society that sacrificed 20 to 250,000 people per year. So what was in store for the bottom? Well, basically, if you got caught being a bottom, they would imprison you, rip out your colon, which I'm not even sure how you get just the colon out, and then they would burn you alive. But fear not, gays, because just out of the Aztec territories, being gay seemed to be generally accepted. In fact, there was so much gay stuff going on around the time that the Spanish first landed on the Americas. A conquistador named Cortez wrote back to the King of Spain in a letter which said, "We know and have been informed, without room for doubt, that the indigenous people practice the abominable sin of sodomy," which is old-timey speak for indigenous people doing butt stuff. Gay butt stuff. So you could see from the letter that the Spanish were not keen on the gays, and so to stamp out any homosexual activity, the Spanish took any gay that they caught to public executions or getting torn apart by dogs. Pre-colonial America was not the only gay civilization though. So was ancient Greece and Rome. In fact, it was a tradition called pederasty. The idea was that there would be a relationship between two men. One was an older, socially higher class person, and the other was a younger, adolescent teen. And although it really depended from city-state to city-state, in general the practice was widely accepted. If you were the older guy. The younger guy, on the other hand, who was usually the receiving end of the relationship, was treated poorly because, well, to be honest, their idea of being gay isn't really the same as what we consider being gay today. Like, from my understanding of all this, if John and Josh are in a relationship today, they are both equally gay. But in ancient Rome, if John and Josh are in a relationship, but John is the one receiving, then he would be the one that gets all the hate, while Josh would be treated indifferently. So I guess ancient people just really hated the bottoms of the relationship. The Aztecs weren't too keen on them either. Anyway, a system similar to pederasty was also found in Japan, in the two places you would least expect, in monasteries and in samurai culture. It was the same idea of an older, usually higher socially ranked man having a relation with a younger, usually adolescent teen. Although there wasn't the same hatred for the younger man in Japan as opposed to Greek or Aztec culture. The samurai one was super random to me because, I don't know, I just never heard of any gay samurais. But homosexual relations seem to be kind of ingrained in samurai culture. Just like the monasteries, there would be an older, higher class samurai, and then a younger adolescent boy who was kind of like a student. Now, the relation didn't have to be gay. It really could have just been like a teacher-student thing. But other times, if both parties agreed, there would be a relationship. And other places were also surprisingly open to homosexuality. In India, gay people were pretty common, and were even written about in the Kama Sutra. And Thailand's love for ladyboys is not just a recent trend, with references to gay people dating all the way back to 800 years ago. Although I guess all these gay people shouldn't be too surprising for a country whose capital city is called Bangkok. Anyway, that's not to say every civilization was gay friendly. I already touched on the Aztecs, but there was also the Assyrians and certain Germanic tribes who did not seem to be a fan of the whole gay thing. So overall, if you found yourself being gay in an older civilization, you'd be good, as long as you weren't the bottom. I mean, there was a wide variety of ways that gay people were treated in the past. Because while the Aztecs were absolutely brutal, in other cultures, gay relations were so widespread it was literally ingrained in the culture. But obviously, in more recent history, there was a lot more homophobic sentiment, even in some of the countries which were more accepting of gay people in the past. So, what happened? Well, it usually comes down to one main reason. Usually, it was an outside influence, whether that be a religion or just culture, that shifted a previously more tolerant culture into being a homophobic one. Like, for example, there was a homophobic sentiment in Abrahamic religions, and so as these religions grew, specifically Christianity spreading to Europe, so did a homophobic sentiment. And then when a Christian Europe took over pretty much everything, they exported their culture, and with that, the homophobia with it. And now, I'm not saying that Christianity and Islam were the sole reasons that there was a change in attitude, and there definitely was other factors to this, like Zoroastrianism, which is a super old religion, was partially the reason that India first started to become less tolerable to homosexuals. And for the Chinese, it was Central Asian cultures like the Mongols who shifted how they felt about gay people. And some cultures like the Aztecs came to their own conclusion that gay people were ass. But by and large, when a place was influenced by Western culture,
about many ethnic groups in Africa that tolerated or even celebrated gay relationships in their vast histories, but one group that has yet to be mentioned on this channel are the famous Moors, who came from North Africa during the Middle Ages and would stake claim in and rule over territories in the southern parts of Spain, Portugal, and even Italy. When people think of why some Spanish, Portuguese, or Italian people are more olive-colored with darker features, it's likely because of their African and Arab past during the Middle Ages. According to Spanish historian and politician Claudio Sanchez Albornoz, who was born in 1893 and died in 1984, the Moors were renowned for their same-sex relationships during the Middle Ages. Though the historian Andalusia was also a historically revolutionary city for its acceptance of same-sex relationships during this time period as well. Because Islam and the powerful Ottoman rulers of the time were seen as such a masculine-based society where women were in many instances separated and removed from men, allowances were made for powerful politicians and military leaders to bring young male concubines on their trips through the Middle East and Europe. Having a young cult of followers and male concubines was seen as a sign of power or privilege of conquering and ruling men. Many Arabic slaves from Europe, the Middle East, and Africa were also made into sex workers for high-ranking men. This practice of male sex work has existed in Arab African countries since the Middle Ages and exists in many Arab countries today, although less openly. During the Islamic Middle Ages, there has also been numerous amounts of homoerotic artwork and poems by Muslim scholars, which were circulated amongst the Moorish men of North Africa and Europe during this incredible era in history. Many Andalusian Moorish kings that ruled Spain roughly 1,000 years ago between the years 1023 to 1091 were recorded to have affairs with men, and some of these kings even wrote poetry about their love for men. The Abidad dynasty in particular produced two emirs or kings of antiquity, Al-Mutamid of Seville and Yusuf III, who wrote homoerotic poetry. There are several other popular classical Arabic poets of their era who were celebrated in Moorish Europe, including Abu Nuwas and Ibn Hazm, that all spoke of their intimate relationships and feelings for men in their poetry. I've heard of the Moors for so many years and the power of their culture during history and their importance to black history, but yet again I'm astounded at how their history has been sterilized. And we are recollecting that another important part of African history had tolerance and spaces for same-sex relationships. It seems though in some ways humanity has progressed since, but in other ways we have regressed, and it's time for those of African descent, including those in North Africa, to educate themselves on the true history of their culture and the reality of same-sex desire in their own people's cultural identity.
What changed that reality and pushed us back, relegating us to an even more regressive mindset than people thousands of years ago? The answer to that question lies in one of the deepest corners of society. Homosexuality was not a term that originated at the same time as love between people of the same gender. In fact, thousands of years passed between the emergence of this word and the first relationships of this kind, which had existed worldwide for a long time. Even with the rise of the first great civilization, there were texts that openly spoke of homosexuality as a practice approved by the Sumerian gods. These ideas did not fade away with the Great Babylon, and gradually, they flourished in other empires as well. Beyond the Romans and Greeks, known for their acceptance and practice of same-gender relationships, these ideas appeared in other cultures as part of everyday life. If we move towards Asia, the mighty Han Dynasty, which ruled in China over 2,000 years ago, was known as a time when homosexual relationships were common, even among the nobility. The emperor himself had several male lovers, and this practice continued to spread in the coming centuries. The existence of engravings and writings approving this practice as something natural is not unique to the Asian giant. Throughout the history of this continent, there have been many countries and empires where homosexuality constituted a fundamental aspect. In feudal Japan, known for its fierce warriors and brutal battles, there were many men who engaged in such relationships. The naturalness of these relationships was such, that throughout Japanese history, hundreds of works were written in which homosexuality appeared, such as the Tale of Genji by Lady Murasaki. Beyond imperial culture, homosexuality had such an impact that several religious currents approved and even promoted it. Among them, Kobo Daishi stands out. Better known as Kukai, the founder of one of the main Buddhist schools in Japan, encouraged the development of relationships between people of the same gender as something natural and good. Diversity reigned on earth, and regardless of culture, race, or religion, homosexuality had become an accepted practice in most places. Sadly, everything changed after a certain event. In the year 380 AD, the Roman Emperor Theodosius I signed the Edict of Thessalonica, a treaty that officialized the new and only religion approved by the Roman Empire. This religion soon spread throughout its borders, eliminating any other pagan beliefs.
The Indian worldview since ancient times has had space for every imaginable entity. These entities range from social to scientific, and from imaginary to mathematical. No way of looking at the world has been excluded. This is why it is curious in modern times to find certain ways of life described as unnatural or taboo. This is something India of yore does not share with modern India. We have stories of Narad falling into a pond and emerging from it as a woman. This is how he discovers the meaning of Maya. Another story tells of Shiva bathing in the Yamuna to become a woman and dance with Krishna. In Ahmedabad, there is a temple belonging to Bahuchara, a goddess who rides the rooster. It is said that there was a pond here that could turn women into men. Those who seek a male child still visit this dried up pond and seek blessings from hijras, men who have chosen to dress like women. A ritual held every year in Pondicherry remembers the marriage of Arjuna's son, Arvan, who was going to be sacrificed for the sake of victory in the Mahabharata war. Krishna turned into a woman called Mohini and married him. She even wailed for him when he was sacrificed. In the Kritivas Ramayana, there is a story of two women who make love to each other in the absence of their husband and produce a child without bones. One way to understand these stories is to appreciate that in ancient India, lines dividing male from female and heterosexual from homosexual were blurred. These tales were told without guilt or shame and are not uncommon by any means. Where do these stories stem from? Perhaps they have their roots in Indian metaphysics. In a world where all manifestations of the divine are said to exist, there is space not only for men and women, but also for men with a woman's heart and women with a man's needs. Masculinity and femininity are only labels that are applied to bodies being occupied by eternal souls. The Hindu view of the world has always been friendly towards different ways of being and seeing. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna not to be arrogant. He tells him that there is much more to this universe than the human mind can fathom. Though the human mind creates boundaries, reality is diverse and can contain everything. This is the point being made by Hindu temples when they juxtapose beautiful apsaras with bloodthirsty demons in their architecture. They teach us that there is nothing unnatural in nature and that every way of being is a manifestation of the divine.
Issue, I think we can all agree in terms of this movement. Some people, you know, from the biblical text, they just don't like same sex. Other people, they just don't like the trans bit, and other people just don't like the they thems. You know what I mean? It's ironic because even though like the flag itself is meant to represent the acceptance of people that love the same sex, it's not about that, right? I think it's more turned into like a religion now.
The Sparkle Creed. I believe in the non-binary God whose pronouns are plural. I believe in Jesus Christ, their child, who wore a fabulous tunic and had 2 dads and saw everyone as a sibling child of God. I believe in the rainbow spirit who shatters our image of one white light and refracts it into a rainbow of gorgeous diversity. I believe in the church of everyday saints, as numerous, creative, and resilient as patches on the AIDS quilt, whose feet are grounded in mud and whose eyes gaze at the stars in wonder. I believe in the calling to each of us that love is love. So, beloved, let us love. I believe, glorious God, help my unbelief. Amen.
When it first started in the 70s, like this.
The pink triangle flag, which represents homosexuality. The symbol itself dates back to the first concentration camps in Nazi Germany and was used to mark homosexuals. The homosexual community reclaimed and revived the pink triangle in the 1970s as a symbol of overcoming persecution. Do you know where the LGBT+ pride flag came from? The answer takes us back to the late 1970s and gay artist and drag queen Gilbert Baker. Baker was urged by Harvey Milk, the first openly gay elected official in California, to create a flag that represented the queer community. So Baker created a flag with 8 stripes, each with its own color and corresponding meaning. Hot pink for sex, red for life, orange for healing, yellow for sunlight, green for nature, turquoise for magic and art, indigo for serenity and harmony, and violet for spirit. Those were the elements that Baker believed were present in all people. This flag debuted on June 25, 1978 in the San Francisco Gay Freedom Day Parade. In 1979, pink was removed because of the scarcity of the fabric, and similar production issues led to dropping turquoise and replacing the indigo color with a more basic blue, leaving the more traditional 6 stripes. In 1994, the rainbow became a more established symbol for LGBT+ pride when Baker constructed a mile-long version of the flag for the 25th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. In 2017, Baker added a lavender stripe to the top of his original flag, symbolizing diversity and bringing the total to 9 stripes. While the rainbow flag was meant to represent the entire community, it turns out that the community itself is divided.
That flag outside that window and in this very room, the American flag, that's something that unifies us all, and that's why it's up there. The North Dakota flag as well unifies us all as North Dakotans. But the American flag represents the hearts of Americans, and the LGBT flag represents the genitals of certain Americans.
Me having a flag flying doesn't take away anything from your rights and freedoms. But you know what it does for me? It shows me I live in a city that appreciates and embraces me and the people of my community, and that I can live here and feel safe. That's what it does. I'm sorry it doesn't make you feel comfortable, but we're here, we're queer, and we're not going away.
Thank you. But what about this flag that's kind of been emerging?
Pedophilia pride flag. Now, this flag doesn't come as a surprise to me at all because I halfway expected pedophilia to be legalized many years ago because Democrats would stoop so low to be inclusive to everybody. So this right here is the pedo flag. The technical term of this flag is MAP, which stands for Minor Attracted Persons. Now, the fact that this flag even exists is disgusting in itself, but once I actually look at this flag and look at the colors, it disgusts me even more. So here's a breakdown of what the colors mean on the flag. The top 2 stripes are blue to represent attraction to young boys. The bottom 2 stripes are pink to represent attraction to young girls. The inner yellow stripes are to represent childhood and general attraction to minors regardless of their gender. And the middle stripe is white to represent innocence and unwillingness to offend. How disgusting.
Actions is not the same thing as being gay.
The colors were meant to represent acceptance of love, right? That's what it was meant to represent. Went from, hey, we're going to accept gay people for however they want to live, and now it's accept trans people, and now it's accept people that don't know what they are, but we should make a name up for them. And there's 300 genders just like this.
Hi, I'm Cody. I primarily go by E, M, or Z on pronouns, but I'm comfortable being referred to using any neopronouns that are not Z here. And a little bit about who I am. I am a white, transmasculine, femme, non-binary, disabled, neurodivergent, obsessive-compulsive, chronically ill, Unitarian Universalist, raised Jewish, non-monogamous, demi-low romantic, gray demi-bisexual, survivor of acute and complex trauma, millennial, and cat parent.
I'm not into all the other bullshit. I think. What other bullshit? The they and them. Yeah. And all that extra shit that we added during the pandemic because everyone was so bored on their houses. They just started to make up more shit.
More stuff. Yeah.
That's where the conservatives like me because I'm just real.
Yeah, you do have a conservative vibe to you.
Them. You're trans, you're male, or you're female.
And you're standing on that.
Get so mad when I say that. How are you a they? What the does that mean? It's stupid is what it is.
Yeah.
But you need someone like me that looks like me to say it. Because if you say it, it turns into you're homophobic, you hate trans people, you hate gays. And it's just how you feel. You don't hate anyone. You just think it's stupid.
What the Native Americans think.
Though the label has only been used since the 90s, the concept of the Two-Spirit is something indigenous groups have identified with for centuries. But what does Two-Spirit actually mean, and where does it come from? So what is Two-Spirit? It's an umbrella term that bridges indigenous and Western understandings of gender and sexuality. You may recognize it as the two that sometimes appears on the end of LGBTQ2. There are many definitions and understandings of Two-Spirit, and each is nation-specific. The term was intentionally introduced by Native people with the goal of finding common ground and helping educate about traditional teachings in a contemporary context. The Two-Spirit Society of Denver offers the following definition. Two-Spirit refers to another gender role believed to be common among most, if not all, First Peoples of Turtle Island, North America. One that had a proper and accepted place within Native societies. This acceptance was rooted in the spiritual teachings that say all life is sacred. So how did the term Two-Spirit first come about? In 1990, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, at the 3rd annual Native American Gay and Lesbian Gathering, the term Two-Spirit was proposed and affirmed by consensus. The word was a potential solution to what Native scholars and activists called the problem of naming, or making the many different sexual and gender identities that fall under the Two-Spirit umbrella legible across Native and non-Native cultures alike. For example, to illustrate the diversity of meanings that Two-Spirit contains, consider the following. In Lakota, the word winkte means to be as a woman and refers to two-souled Lakota people who transgress boundaries of gender from what may be considered male to female. In Diné, nadlehe means those who transform and refers to one of 4 separate genders: masculine-feminine, masculine-masculine, feminine-masculine, and feminine-feminine. Each gender has its own word in the Diné language. And those are just 2 nation-specific examples.
Isn't that kind of interesting? I think that kind of brings like a new take on it, you know, 2 souls. That's a new take on it. But there's even trans animals.
Fish are a common aquatic example of transgender animals, but they don't just change expression, they also are able to spawn and carry offspring because they change sex. All the little Nemones are actually male-presenting hermaphrodites. When the female of a school dies, the dominant male binge eats and becomes a female of the group, literally. She, note the pronoun change there, she has transitioned and chooses a partner from the school who becomes then the dominant male, and they go back to one to do the whole thing again. We would call that a transition, where a gender expression would change from male to female or female to male. Wrasses also follow this pattern, but instead of transitioning from M to F, they go female to male, F to M. When the new male wrasse takes over as the leader of the school of females, then they're the big boss. Another example is the marsh harrier, a Euro-African bird of prey. This bad boy eats frogs and small mammals and other birds. It's badass. It summers in the UK and winters in Africa. Class. Males are brown, ginger, and gray with black wingtips, but not always, and in fact 40% of males look and act like the chocolate brown yellow-crowned females of the species. Their gender expression is different. Experts think some of the males look female because the species are highly territorial, and the males that look female can breed without fighting off the other males. Gender expression for the win. Spotted hyenas are one of the most amazing animals in the gender expression community because they have pseudopenises. Yeah. The females have the pseudopenis, and it looks so convincing. Just looking at a spotted hyena cannot tell you their sex. Female hyenas can get erections and copulate and urinate. They can even birth through the pseudopenis. The pseudopenis ain't a dick though, it's a clitoris. See, even in humans, the clitoris and penis come from the same fetal tissue. It's called a homologous organ, but in this case, it's pretty extreme. The swollen clitoris looks a lot like a penis, and the labia, or folds of the vulva, form what look like testes. It's an extraordinary example of transitioned gender expression in the animal kingdom. There are a lot of animals that don't have sex and gender in full alignment 100% of the time, and others that transition from one gender expression or actual sex to another. Sometimes it's due to an environmental change, like the loss of a dominant mate, which triggers hormonal changes, and other times it's predetermined by evolution, but it exists and it's real and it's natural.
Let's just dive deeper in the whole trans thing, right? Did you know that men can lactate?
Men can lactate, which means they can breastfeed. But how? So everyone, regardless of gender, has breast tissue. When this tissue is exposed to hormones like progesterone and estrogen, it becomes capable of producing milk during pregnancy. But with men, this happens due to high levels of a whole different hormone called prolactin. And इसके usually 3 causes होते हैं. सबसे पहला है pituitary tumor. Pituitary gland brain का वो वाला part है जो prolactin बनाता है, and इसमें tumor होने से prolactin का production काफी बढ़ जाता है. Second is hypothyroidism. इसमें low thyroid hormones की वजह से pituitary gland की activity बढ़ जाती है, as most hormonal circuits in our body are connected. This might also lead to unwanted lactation. Psychiatric medication, opioid medication, and blood pressure pills are some of the other reasons why men can lactate. But I mean, in exchange for the lack of enough male contraceptives, I think the least men can do is bear the responsibility of breastfeeding children.
Which means that they have a possibility that they could breastfeed. And now with today's technology, you can also give birth.
Picture this. The year is 2045, men across the world are all infertile, so what do people turn to? Well, it sounds horrifying, but scientists are already experimenting with lab-grown sperm.
A French startup company says it's reached a breakthrough creating human sperm in a lab for the first time.
Scientists say they have succeeded in creating functioning sperm.
Ah yes, lab-grown sperm. And this artificial sperm will probably be used to grow artificial humans in an artificial womb.
Introducing Ectolife, the world's first artificial womb facility, powered entirely by renewable energy. Ectolife allows infertile couple to conceive a baby and become the true biological parents of their own offspring. The facility features 75 highly equipped labs. Each state-of-the-art lab can accommodate up to 400 growth pods or artificial wombs. Every pod is designed to replicate the exact conditions that exist inside the mother's uterus. A single building can incubate up to 30,000 lab-grown babies per year.
Are you smoking crack? Yeah, man. That's the future we're headed to. Trans people are transitioning all the way. They're getting their vocal cords shaved. They're getting their privates cut. And they can even have birth and breastfeed. So really, it could change the DNA of a lot of people. Because these days, ironically, men can get pregnant.
The Waters used the phrase pregnant persons twice, and I think in response the department used the phrase birthing clinics. Is it the position of the department that men can get pregnant and give birth?
Senator,
I'm sorry to do this to you again.
Yeah, I mean, really.
But we need an answer. You are the Department of Health, but people put a lot of emphasis in this.
And you need to get pregnant and give birth, you need to have a functioning uterus. So whatever you call someone, and it's generally very unlikely that someone who is a man would have a uterus and give birth. So I think that's all we can really say.
So only biological women can get pregnant?
Well, you have to have functioning female reproductive organs to get pregnant and give birth. Yeah.
Which would limit it only to women, presumably. No. Okay. Have you ever been pregnant?
Okay.
Okay. So no, in any event, I'm sorry, I haven't quite finished. I've just got another question, Chair. I was actually going to ask the same question to the TGA, but I expect, because in fact when the TGA responded to me about a question in vaccination and pregnancy, the term pregnant persons was used. So, Professor Skerritt, do you want to have a go at that one? Does the TGA consider that men can get pregnant and give birth?
I think the Secretary has given the biology lesson that you have to have a uterus in order to become pregnant and carry a pregnancy through to full term, and therefore you have to be biologically female. Different language is used because obviously individuals may choose to represent themselves as different from their birth gender. So that's why we talked about pregnant persons. But I think it's pretty obvious you need to have a functional uterus to be able to carry a pregnancy.
That's kind of how this degenerate thing is kind of going. People have a lot of sex, but they don't have babies, right? Which is a good thing for the earth and a bad thing at the same time.
You here for an abortion too?
Sports, is it good to have trans people in sports? No. Like maybe trans people should have their own movement, separated from the gay rights movement. They shouldn't be as inclusive. They should have their own movement.
Trans sports versus women's sports. Now, here's the deal. We've talked about this in the beginning, about how there's the LGB and then there's a trans, and how there's sex and biology, and then there's expression. They're getting muddled now, especially in sports, because you have biological men saying that they're women and then competing against women and winning. Obviously, this is a spectrum. Obviously, not every female, not every trans man or trans female is super athletic and they can absolutely dominate and win, because there are female like MMA fighters who can like jump me. Like, I'm not saying that these anomalies don't exist. But what I am saying is that the average male can overpower a woman. That's not being sexist. That's not being anti-feminist. That's just basic biology. That's why we have two different realms, two different sports, two different leagues, male and female, because typically the males will dominate the female. I do not think it should be socially acceptable for anyone to just say they're any gender and go out and win scholarships, win sports events. We need to protect the people who are in the sports right now and accommodate the trans. I think a trans league would be awesome. I think a trans league would sell tickets out the woo-ha. A trans football league? What? Like, come on now. Biological men be men, the biological women be women, and the trans people be trans in their own lane. I'm not saying they shouldn't be do sports. I'm just saying you need to have your own lane. Just don't like this idea that there are actual men competing against women and winning. And it's not transphobic to point it out. No one's being hateful. No one's being hateful by saying Leah Thomas should not be on a female swimming league. That's not something that's hateful. That's just, I want to protect biological women. I understand the advantage that biological men have over biological women. It's not hateful. It's science.
Here's some interesting things that I found out about the trans movement in general, right? Has anyone seen the movie The Matrix? You know, with Keanu Reeves? Yes. Okay, so the two guys who are brothers, by the way, now technically sisters, they invented Matrix as a way to express how they could live a life in a different body through kind of this medium of a story where they're living in a fantasy world. And they take the red or the blue pill. And the irony to this, right, is that the red pill is meant to represent estrogen. And both of the guys are trans, right? And if you watch the movie, right, it's about pretty much like living in somewhat of a simulation, right? And how these people, you know, go into the real world, and the real world isn't what this simulation is appearing to be. And by simulation, I assume in the trans world is basically like my body is not where my mind is. You know what I mean?
We had, you know, the Matrix stuff was all like about the desire for transformation, but it was all coming from a closeted point of view. And so we had the character of Switch, who was like a character who would be, you know, a man in the real world, and then a woman in the Matrix. And, you know, that's both were where our headspaces were.
What would people's issues be around the transgender movement? The indoctrination of kids on TV shows and in schools.
This is bullshit. We know it, all right? We do not need to be having literature that's showing boys how to suck dick, all right? I'm very, very frustrated about it, okay? And you may think that schools know the best for our children. You know who know the best for our children? The parent.
Okay, this one is called the Gay BCs because, of course, the regular ABCs are not good enough. If you're a gay activist, you need your own ABCs. So you got the Gay BCs. This is written by M.L. Webb. And I'll just read, this is the description of the book. It says, a playdate extravaganza transforms into a celebration of friendship, love, and identity. as four friends sashay out of all the closets, dress up in a wardrobe fit for kings and queens, and discover the wonder of imagination. That's what the book is. Now, we know it's an ABC book. So I think we should keep this in mind as we go through it. What's the age range of a book like this? I'd say probably 3 years old to 7. 3 to 7 is about the age range for a book of this kind. And that's what all the content in this book is directed towards, are kids of that age. A is for ally, a friend who is there to stand up for you with strength, love, and care. B is for bi. You can shout it out loud. I like boys and girls, and that makes me proud. Bisexual is, this is, again, we're talking kids 3 to 7 years old, and we're talking to them about being bisexual. Yeah, for all the 4-year-old bisexuals out there, you know what? A 4-year-old is not bisexual. He's not gay. Kids at that age don't have a sexuality. That's something that develops over time.
Exists. How is the thing that we're watching that someone actually sat down and created? How and why? For children. Leave sex out of it. Full stop. Period. Done. Complete kapwash. Just leave them out. Just leave them out. Leave them out. Leave the kids alone. I don't know why I got to keep saying it.
Prayer is banned, but drag shows are allowed to permeate the whole place. It's okay. You can't teach the Bible, but you can teach children that America is evil and that men are able to get pregnant. Whatever it takes, conservatives must liberate America's children from the captivity of these Marxist teachers' unions. That's what they are. Where do they come from? Across the country, we need to implement strict prohibitions on teaching inappropriate racial, sexual, and political material to America's school children in any form whatsoever. And if federal bureaucrats are going to push this radicalism, we should abolish the Department of Education.
Isn't that crazy, bro? Like, when you think about it, like, that's nuts. And this is the world that we're living in, right? And it's ironic because identity is one of the biggest sore points that affects everyone, really, because throughout your whole life, you're kind of searching for the person who you are. And I feel like you get a solid grounding on who you are as a person towards your mid-20s, you kind of know who you are, you know what you like roughly, you know what you don't like. But it's becoming a problem in the sense where this idea of like this movement creating indoctrination of confusion for the kids that are in the school, because they don't know what's going on. They're learning about this, they're learning about themselves. You know what I mean? And for some kids that are feeling inclined like that, which is like literally 1% of the population, right, in the world, they feel a sense of support.
Why are people so neurotic about it? Simple, it's control. The easiest way to manipulate people is to make them feel afraid, to make them feel obligated, to make them feel bad. Make them not know who they are. Or you could just go on and tell them that it's either good or better to have thousands of identities that have absolutely nothing to do with your inner workings of your soul. All of these are things that these types of people do. They either play the victim or the bully. The bully might use aggression or violent threats to try to control you, while the victim plays hurt and makes everybody else feel badly for them.
What if this individual is pre-wired to be a woman, but in a man's body? I'm saying, what if that is the case? What could you imagine that experience would be like for that person?
Pretty hard. pretty hard.
I don't know if people are really born gay. My reasoning is because I feel like the number of gay people, it rises every year. And if like you're talking about it to young kids, they're more likely to become gay. Like if you're, you know, like they're shoving like pronouns and stuff down kids' throats at a younger age, then they're more likely to become that thing rather than it just being born inside of them.
I think it was around like 10 as well when I started questioning if I was bi, and then since then it was kind of like a slippery slope because I was like, am I bi, omni, lesbian, and then I kind of like came to the point, and then now recently I've been like, am I pan, but then I think now I'm starting to realize that I'm queer. But yeah, it was.
I feel like the biggest issue that affects everyone regardless is the grooming of children and how they are trying to prey on children to spread this movement.
Kids transitioning.
Can I tell everyone if you're a boy or a girl?
Okay. Phoenix would like you to know that she's a girl and she prefers she and her pronouns.
I've done too much in this world. It's ruined my life.
These children have no idea what's going on. Kids can't smoke, drink, drive, vote. A kid can't even get a tattoo because it's permanent on their body. But all of a sudden, we're okay with them making permanent decisions, life-changing decisions, because of the way they're feeling. Have we forgot that they're children? Why is it seen as okay to put kids on puberty blockers? Why is it seen as okay to give children mastectomies?
My name is Chloe Cole, and I'm an 18-year-old detransitioner from the Central Valley of California. I started socially transitioning and identifying as transgender when I was 12 years old, and I was fast-tracked onto medicalization at 13, starting with puberty blockers and testosterone, before I went on to get a mastectomy at 15, and I stopped transitioning at 16 when I realized that I had regretted my transition and that it was starting to cause me emotional and also physical harm.
This community is saying, love yourself as who you are. Be yourself. But then we're also telling them, in order to be yourself, you have to modify your body so that you feel comfortable. Okay, but what happened is being comfortable in my skin? What happened is owning who I am as a person? If I'm a flamboyant man, I'm a flamboyant man. Why all of a sudden, if I'm a flamboyant man or there's a flamboyant boy, he has to go get breasts. He has to chop off body parts. Like, what happened is accepting each other and accepting our lives as we are. What happened to that? Seems a bit hypocritical to me. Got people yelling, be yourself, and then you got other people saying, in order to be yourself, you have to have surgery. What are we doing here? Especially involving children. It's making me feel crazy. Like, how the hell am I transphobic now by not wanting to be with a trans man? When the only reason I'm gay is because I like men. I don't get it, y'all. I'm confused.
And some of them get transitions and
a chunk of your forearm taken out to create other body parts. No one's talking about a lifelong prescription to pills. No one's talking about all the health effects that happen on later in life as you grow up.
I've had 7 surgeries. I've had 1 stress heart attack. I've had a helicopter life ride with a pulmonary embolism. I've had 17 rounds of antibiotics. I had 6 inches of hair on the inside of my urethra for 17 months. Nobody would help me, including the doctor that did this to me because I lost my insurance. I get infections every 3 to 4 months. I'm probably not gonna live very long.
No one's talking about all that. No one's highlighting the people who have detransitioned and bringing up this topic. Claire White has done an amazing job at highlighting this. And you can YouTube it and you'll find a bunch of people who are sharing their story. It's like, even they're shunned out of the community. What happened to uplifting their voices? What happened to just sharing information with people? All of a sudden, by sharing the detransitioner story, you're being transphobic because you're denying someone from being trans. You're trying to persuade them out of being it. It's like, no. I'm giving them the full story. I'm giving them the full scoop.
My dick off and then realized they didn't want to, man. I was in a phase last year where I wasn't sure what gender I was. At that time, I'd given up on myself as a man, and I was looking for a way out. And if I had different friends and different conversations, I'd be sitting here dickless and mad about it. It shouldn't be a fucking crime to ask someone, are you sure that you want to change a gender?
What's the harm, you know, if somebody's going to be a happier person because they say that they're a man or a woman, like what's the harm in just
letting them do it.
I'm not in favor of government banning people who are adults. Children I'm in favor of banning because now you're talking about somebody who's not capable of consent.
Now, I know at this point, you know, I have a lot of people that are triggered and stuff like that. They go, this has nothing to do with anything, it's your ideology. Okay, right? What about the book that was written by two gay geneticists called After the Ball by Marshall Kurtz?
After the Ball, and the subtitle is How America Will Conquer Its Fear and Hatred of Gays in the 1990s. And as I mentioned before, this was written by two Harvard grads who were both gay, Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen. And I read the book. It's out of print, and it's a very large book. But basically, it's a manifesto on how to get American society to accept homosexual behavior as normal. So it's this sort of it's almost like the Communist Manifesto, but a gay manifesto to normalize homosexual behavior in America. And I want to go through the kind of points that really jumped out to me in the book. This was their strategy to normalize homosexual behavior. And it's very, very, very persuasive. And all of what they say in their book, almost every single thing, well, actually every single thing has come to pass. So this manifesto worked. It was controversial at the time, but and you'll see why. But these guys were kind of like take no prisoners, sort of gay guys who wanted to manipulate and persuade America that homosexual behavior was normal. It's time to learn from Madison Avenue to roll out the big guns. Gays must launch a large-scale campaign to reach straights through the mainstream media. We're talking about propaganda. That's a quote from the book. And then they go on to say, the purpose and effect of pro-gay propaganda is to promote a climate of increased tolerance for homosexuals. And that, we say, is good. And they go on to say, propaganda relies more upon emotional manipulation than upon logic, since its goal is, in fact, to bring about a change in the public's feelings. And again, remember, I've talked about this so many times on the show that movies and TV, it's such a strong form of persuasion because it manipulates your emotions. And so they get more into that in a minute, but how to use the media. And in the battle for hearts and minds, effective propaganda knows enough to put its best foot forward. This is what our own media campaign must do. In February 1988, however, a war conference of 175 leading gay activists representing organizations across the land convened in Warrenton, Virginia, to establish a 4-point agenda for the gay movement. The conference gave first priority to a nationwide media campaign to promote a positive image of gays and lesbians. And its final statement concluded, and I'm going to read this final statement from this conference. We must consider the media in every project we undertake. We must, in addition, take every advantage we can to include public service announcements and paid advertisements to cultivate reporters and editors of newspapers, radio, and television. To help facilitate this, we will need national media workshops to train our leaders. Our media efforts are fundamental to the full acceptance of us in American life. It says, number one, employ images that desensitize, jam, and or convert bigots on an emotional level. This is by far the most important task. So getting to your emotions is so important. That's why shows like, as I said, Will and Grace and Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, all those shows manipulate your emotions. And movies like Brokeback Mountain and the Harvey Milk movie, all of those movies manipulate. Oh, in the next point, they say, challenge homo-hating beliefs and actions on an intellectual level. Remember, the rational message serves to camouflage our underlying emotional appeal, even as it pares away the surrounding latticework of beliefs that rationalize bigotry. And another point, they say, gain access to the kinds of public media that would automatically confer legitimacy upon these messages and therefore upon their gay sponsors. To be accepted by the most prestigious media, such as network TV, our messages themselves will have to be, at least initially, both subtle in purpose and crafty in construction. Crafty, just like the devil. And then it goes on, our media strategists must know their target audiences, know which are ripe for persuasion and which are not. And they do this breakdown of intransigence on the one side, and in the middle, ambivalent skeptics, and on the other side, friends. So friends of the gay community, ambivalent people, and then people who refuse to budge. And they talk about which ones to go after. The intransigents are difficult, so they probably ignore those. And then they say, we conclude, therefore, that ambivalent skeptics are our most promising targets. So they want to go for that big group in the middle, ambivalent skeptics. And then they say, the main thing is to talk about gayness until the issue becomes thoroughly tiresome. It's so over the top and obnoxious. And then it goes on to say, first, gays can use talk to muddy the moral waters. That is, to undercut the rationalizations that justify religious bigotry and to jam some of its psychic rewards. This entails publicizing support by moderate churches and raising serious theological objections to conservative biblical teachings. Has that happened? I think so. Basically, invade the church and get people to raise, people like Matthew Vines, to raise serious theological objections to conservative biblical teachings. And then it goes on to say, it suffices here to recall that the visual media, television, films, and magazines, are the most powerful image makers in Western civilization. So once again, I talked about that. TV, movies, so influential in the way even Christians believe about this issue. For example, the average American household, the TV screen radiates its embracing bluish glow for more than 50 hours every week, bringing films, sitcoms, talk shows, and news reports right into the living room. These hours are a gateway into the private world of straights through which a Trojan horse might be passed. So again, using media as this Trojan horse, using Oprah Winfrey and the Ellen Show and all these daytime talk shows, and using them as the Trojan horse.
You have something called critical factor bypass. Critical factor bypass is where you saturate the entirety of the environment in the media, newspapers, magazines, television shows, in the corporate world, in banking, you name it, in schools, colleges. You saturate all of them with a very specific message, and you repeat it over and over and over and over again. Okay? Now, what happens then is that the subconscious mind, because it sees it everywhere, it assumes that it must be true, that this has to be real because it's everywhere in the environment. Yeah. So it programs, once again, the subconscious mind to affect the way the conscious mind perceives reality. Now, based on neurolinguistically programming the individual and mass neurolinguistically programming the populations through critical factor bypass, why they call it that is because your critical thinking is bypassed, because it's programmed in the subconscious brain. That creates something called mass formation hypnosis. Okay, where 25 to 30% of the population believes this external stimuli, believes and is programmed by this material.
They're just sheeple.
Okay. So in order for mass formation hypnosis to occur, that 25 to 30% of the population has to gain some sort of heightened level of radicalism where they scream the loudest and then they get a hold of the levers of power, right? Now, when it comes down to stopping this process from happening, all you need is 5% or more of the population to not become hypnotized and say, no, this is ludicrous, you are nuts, we are not doing that. Now, we've seen the effects of mass formation hypnosis, critical factor bypass, and neurolinguistic programming in Nazi Germany. We saw it with the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia and the USSR. We saw in the Red Revolution in China and the Chinese Communist Party, okay? So we've seen the effects of this process, and it is psychological warfare, okay? Now, when it comes to Q and the Q operation, and the reason I say it's a psychological operation is this. This is how it differs. The Operation Mockingbird media, what I call the Mockingbird media, Operation Mockingbird, CIA infiltrating the media outlets, right? So the Mockingbird media uses the techniques I just laid out to program the populations so that they can use this propaganda to go to war. And then they can transfer public money into private hands. You see? So it's a whole scheme.
Another principle says, in any campaign to win over the public, gays must be portrayed as victims in need of protection so that straights will be inclined by reflex to adopt the role of protector. Does that sound familiar? Gays must be portrayed as victims.
Next concern, which is this idea that anyone who disagrees with anything gay, you're automatically homophobic. We should be allowed to voice our opinion without being scared of being called transphobic, homophobic, whatever it may be. There's a strong difference between someone disagreeing with gay people versus being homophobic. You can disagree with gay people all day long. You can not like what they do all day long. But as long as you treat me with respect, as long as you're not scared of me, you're shunning me away, you're not homophobic in my book. As a grown adult, you have the right to your own opinion and your own values. I don't care what you think. I do care if you're trying to stop me from progressing and you're not and trying to make sure that I'm not seen as equal as you. I care about that. Context matters. And typically when someone says they don't like gay people, they're really referring to not liking the gay community and the gay culture, not that individual. They don't care what that individual does in private, but they care about all the things that are happening within the gay culture and the gay community. That's what they don't like. There's a lot of gay people who feel the same way. There's a lot of gay people who don't subscribe and do not like the LGBTQ plus community because of how harsh they are and all the things that are currently going on in our nation.
So again, we see this whole victim mentality today, this intersectionality. It's just all over the place. And so these guys knew what they were doing. These guys were smart. And then it says, the purpose of victim imagery is to make straights feel very uncomfortable. That is to jam with, I don't know why they use to jam all the time, but it must have been a term in the late 80s. That is to jam with shame the self-righteous pride that would ordinarily accompany and reward their anti-gay belligerence, and to lay groundwork for the process of conversion by helping straights identify with gays and sympathize with their underdog status. Two different messages about the gay victim are worth communicating. First, the public should be persuaded that gays are victims of circumstance, that they no more chose their sexual orientation than they did, say, their height, skin color, talents, or limitations. Which is, in my experience, I didn't choose to be same-sex attracted. That it developed in me, and it's a result of the fall. It's a result of probably a lot of things that happened in my childhood. I was molested. So in that regard, they're correct in that I didn't choose. We argue that for all practical purposes, gays should be considered to have been born gay, even though sexual orientation for most humans seems to be the product of a complex interaction between innate predispositions and environmental factors during childhood and early adolescence. Since no choice is involved, gayness can be no more blameworthy than straightness. And then they talk about the difference between gay men and lesbians. And they say gay men and lesbians are apples and oranges. They happen to find themselves in the same barrel only because their society treats all fruits alike. And as I've talked about with Rosario Butterfield on the show, gay men tend to be kind of, we talked about this, the difference between gay men and lesbians. Gay men were always kind of like, are hedonistic and debaucherous and into, drugs and alcohol. This is my experience. I'm not saying all gay men are like this, but in my experience of 20 years in that life, that's what I saw. And a lot. And it was very pervasive. And lesbians were more political activists and weren't hedonists. So that's the kind of key difference between the two groups. But they had to unite to further the agenda. I want to talk about relationships, gay relationships. And they say relationships between gay men don't usually last very long. And I've talked about this before. The relationships, all of my relationships with guys, I was in 5 serious relationships, lasted 2 years. They all lasted 2 years. They had the same shelf life, the same sine wave. It was like super, exciting in the beginning, and then it would taper off. And then there would be, after about a year, there would be infidelity, and then it would just kind of go downhill from there. Not infidelity on my part, by the way. And so anyway, they say, yet most gay men are genuinely preoccupied with their need to find a lover. In other words, everybody's looking and nobody's finding. How to account for this paradox? And this is crucial. And they admit this. This is interesting. They say part of this is due to the characteristics of male physiology and psychology, which make the sexual and romantic pairing of man with man inherently less stable than the pairing of man with woman. And in parentheses, they say, sorry if the truth hurts. But it's true. When you put 2 men together, because of the physiology and the psychology of the 2 men, the relationship is very unstable. So what they're saying, in a gay relationship, the 2 men, there's no complement. There's no woman to balance that, the male side of it, to, to curb the man's libido. It says, the cheating ratio of married gay males, given enough time, approaches 100%. These are 2 gay guys, and they're admitting that the cheating ratio is 100%. And that, in my experience, that is absolutely the case. Absolutely. And they say men are, after all, as said earlier, more easily aroused than women, who tend to act as a relatively stabilizing influence. A restless gay man is more apt to be led astray by a cute face in the subway or the supermarket. But it's true. It's I like how they put that. A woman is acts as a relatively stabilizing influence on a man. And it's true. That's why God knows what he's doing. That's why God put a man with a woman, and that's where sex is supposed to be expressed, within a covenant of marriage between one man, one woman, for life. They go on, many gay lovers, bowing to the inevitable, agree to an open relationship. They say, it is indeed our impression that when gay relationships last at all, it's in diluted form.
Isn't that interesting? They were both geneticists, and they wanted to figure out a way to feel accepted. And ironically, this has been adopted because you can see it playing out in real time now. But, this is just conspiracy theory. It's not real. Pretty much propaganda from conservatives trying to, decimate the movement, possibly. But the conservatives, they also have their own kind of problems too. Do you guys think that there is such thing as a gay gender?
If a dude speak his mind about transgenders and all that, and he get automatic counsel, how you feel about that?
First of all, 1, we're supposed to have freedom of speech. Number 2, if you free to go and push whatever it is that you believe, I should be able to push what I believe. Like, let's be clear here. These are women in this room. You mean to tell me that I automatically have to address you as one when they have had to fight to literally be the actual one that they are by nature? Hold up, let's make this clear, because I know a lot of people argue about this. Women are women because they have a womb. You ain't got that. I get it. Trauma is a part of this. I get it. Certain feelings, chemical castration, mental manipulation. That's a lot of factors as to why a lot of males have grown up with this mentality, feeling like they're a woman. But you have to face it and stop lying and just say, it's just how I was born. No. Look at your history. Look at your childhood. Look at everything that happened around you. Look at your diet. Look at the chemicals that we're injecting into your body. This is in love, because I got people I know who are trans and they tell me, like, you right. Ain't no judging and there's no hatred whatsoever. But the canceling is real interesting to me, because you don't cancel the people who promote things that kill your people. You don't cancel the people that promote things that attack the women, attack the children, manipulate the men, destroy the family. You don't cancel that. You don't cancel none of that. You don't cancel this government. They saying the same stuff they've been saying. You don't want to teach the truth about none of this, but you telling me if I say, excuse me, sir, these women deserve respect. You can't just step in there when they have been a woman their whole life and say, because you feel like one, we're automatically going to address you as one. You get all the rights. You get to go to the restroom with them. Hold on, bruh. How far you want to go? You have trans who have been brought to female prisons, and now they're trying to figure out how these female inmates is getting pregnant. Hold up. That's big facts, and it's Googleable. Let me know how far you're willing for this to go, because most of the people in the LGBTQ community don't agree with most of the stuff that the government is pushing. It ain't them. Who owns these networks? Who owns this? And that's the other thing. The LGBTQ got to stand up against the people who are dressing up as LGBTQ to destroy the livelihood of everybody else. Y'all got to confront your own damn people.
Some group comes along and commissions a World Pride mural like this, right in the middle of the city, mixing up sadomasochism, gay pride, gimp suits and kids' teddy bears in one very public location. I mean, someone went too far, didn't they? Certainly some people thought so.
Fucking sick of this fucking perverted, putrid shit, like a bunch of dead set pedophiles hiding behind some fucking gay pride, whatever the fuck you're doing. How far you want to fucking go? How far is this until you're showing dicks in the streets now? Huh? And everyone's too scared to say something? We're not even men, we're not women, we're fucking this, we're that, we're 100 different things, forcing it upon us. We say nothing. Everyone's too scared to fucking say something. Then it's forcing it upon our kids. It's gotten to the point, now there's a fucking pointing pornographic images in the streets with gay flags, big homosexual teddy bears. You think we can't see what's going on? This time's coming to an end. All of these child groomers hiding in plain sight, the time's coming to an end. I'm not copping it no more. I'm fucking over it. I'm calling it out. Anytime I see any of these putrid maggots trying to hide their little shit, targeting kids, just like Balenciaga. It's no fucking different what they're doing. Sick of this shit. We're done. The whole country's done. The whole world is done. It's been going on for how long? 10, 15 years. You're getting worse and you're getting worse and you're pushing it and you're pushing it and you're pushing it. What's next? What's next? Walk around the streets naked yourself, masturbating? What's next? What else do we have to accept? Because we're too scared to talk. Because you cancel everyone else. What else? What else do you want to be called, huh? What else do you want to teach our children?
Hey guys, like heaps of people were really offended about what I said the other day, and I guess what I want to say is, like, I'm sorry for absolutely fucking nothing, you putrid peasants. They're nothing but apologists and deflectors. Someone comes online and points these putrid maggots out after fucking 15 years, all these pedophiles hiding behind the gay fucking LGBT fucking flag. So everyone's too scared, because if you point them out, everyone goes, oh, it's homophobia. Right, someone finally stands up, someone with a platform, and every maggot, all they can say is, so what? Like, what about? What about? What about? What about the bloke down the street that molested someone? What about those old homosexual men that worm their way into the Catholic Church and molest boys? What about them? What about them? What fucking about them? Fuck them too. Fuck them too. And they get theirs. That's why they're all over the news. What about them, cunt? What about this? What about what we're actually fucking talking about and deflecting it? What about the motherfuckers that are actually doing what I said, indoctrinating our kids with putrid shit? What about that? Everything's an apology or a deflection. Ones that know, we're not here to prove it to them anymore. They've had 10, 15 years to figure it out, and they're not figuring it out for a reason. Because their acceptance, they allow it, they're on that side. Anyone that apologizes, deflects, accepts, pretend that doesn't happen, they're on that side. We're not here to verbal them. We don't care what they think. Fuck them. They've already shown it. The fact that I can come out, right, and say what I said, and I'm just here for us, we know it, right? They got no idea. 95% of the actual population hates the fucking guts of these maggots and can't wait until they're brought down. Everyone's just too scared to say anything. That's why when everyone agrees with me in the comments, people are like, I can't believe you're agreeing with this bloke. Like, he's from jail. Like, did he even go to school? Nah, I didn't. I just don't like pedophiles. I just don't like the fact that these motherfuckers have wormed their way into primary schools, high schools, and anything about God, evil God, and they teach kids that men can become pregnant. Huh? Teach kids that they can choose whatever sex they are and adults don't have any say in it. Go fuck yourself.
All this shit is fucking lies, cuz. You know, all this shit, you know, this little world that I've been dragged into. You know this tranny shit with the fucking kids what I spoke? Fuck them trannies, cuz. Fuck them. Puh. I'll spit in your fucking face if I see you do it, but it's not about that. You know, if I cared about being a popular or getting money or this and that, I'd go on with this. You know, people thought, oh no, he's like in some way there's this cancel. Nah, brother. I tell you what, there's an interesting thing that happened. Everything is much, much better now that I done it, that I spoke out. You know what it made me notice? I got dragged into this little fucking bullshit world. I seen a glimpse of it. Far left and alt-right and communists and neo-Nazis, and it's all fucking lies, lad. It's all bullshit. Donald Trump and Joe Biden and all of these gronks, they're all fucking maggots. They're all maggots. You know how easy I could just go on with this stuff and play this character? You know how easy I could do that? But it's a fucking lie, lad. And they love, you know, the people real in power, they love that I'm doing this. You know, it's not what you think. You see what I started? Trust me, you noticed ever since I spoke out, people marching in the streets, everyone speaking out. All of a sudden, Holly Holm at the USC, yeah, everyone since I done it, cuz. So, you know how easy I could go on with this and get hundreds of thousands of followers and lots of money. But it's not about that, cuz. It's about the truth. There's things more important. This right, this left, this fucking, I'm a neo this and I'm a fucking this. It's all bullshit, cuz. They laugh when we're arguing about this shit. They laugh, right? At the end of the day, these fucking spinners, someone in a powerful position put them where they are, right? The tranny didn't just go to the fucking school and say, let me teach the kids. No, it didn't, cuz. Someone powerful decided that it should happen. Someone powerful decided that the trannies should be beating up women in sports and running races. Someone decided that. Someone decided that these sex books, right? These gay sex books should be put in schools. And it wasn't a gay person. A tranny didn't decide that a tranny should run in a women's race. Think about that. Who the fuck decided this? These are rubbish. These are distractions. These are full-blown distractions. And I was part of the distraction, right? I was, you know? Because I got sick of it. I got sick of these fucking cunts doing this with the kids and that. So I spoke about it, right? And I was part of the distraction that distracted you from what's really going on. And I distracted you for a few weeks, but I'm not going to go on. I'm not distracting you no more. I'm not going to sit here. You know how many cunts out there, left and right, and they sit there and spend their entire identity, their whole presence, their whole influence. Everything they post is about, yeah, fuck this gay agenda. And the other side is, yeah, fuck these fascism, masculinity cunts. There's some real shit going on in the world that they sit back and they laugh at us while this is happening, cuz.